All right, everybody, we're back. I'm Tom Sosnoff. He's Dylan Radigan. This is Truth or Skepticism. Mr. Radigan, how art thou?
I've never been better. I was thinking, a few years ago we did this exact podcast, meaning the New Year's Eve. I mean, because again, the next time I'll see you, we'll have clicked through the calendar. So it's our last podcast of the year.
Yeah.
And I believe I was in Istanbul that night. It was a couple years ago. And I was talking about my teleportation SPAC. I think it was probably New Year's between 2020 and 2021. Do you remember that?
I remember the teleportation discussion because it reminded me of my old Calvin and Hobbes days. But
Sure.
But I don't remember the date of it.
Yeah, no, I remember because it was sort of like a New Year's prediction kind of a thing. And I just thought it'd be appropriate a couple of years on to update everybody that really not much has happened. So anyway,
that's good. Thank you.
it's important. It's an important. I know everybody wanted to know, so I wanted to get that out there.
Okay, appreciate it.
But some other things have happened.
Good.
In fact, I discovered can I read you something? I had a little discovery here that I want to read you something off my phone briefly, if you'll indulge me. It will only take probably 20 seconds.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. It says, Tom Sosnoff is an American entrepreneur and financial expert best known for co-founding the online brokerage firm Thinkorswim and the financial media company tastylive. Sosnoff was born in Chicago, Illinois. I think that's probably wrong.
That's wrong.
And grew up in the suburbs. That's kind of right, but the wrong suburbs.
That's the wrong.
He attended the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. That is not correct.
That's not correct.
Where he received a degree in finance, which by definition is incorrect as a result of the failure to attend that university.
That's all incorrect information. Yes.
After graduation, he worked at various financial firms. They don't get the Drexel note there. Financial firms before eventually co-founding Thinkorswim in 1999. I don't know if that's the correct year.
That is the correct year.
Okay. The company quickly became a leading player, that's complimentary, in the online brokerage industry and eventually was acquired by TD Ameritrade in 2009. That's more or less accurate.
Yes, that's accurate.
In 2011, Sosnoff co-founded tastylive.
Mm-hmm.
Financial media company, produces educational content, live programming. In addition, Sosnoff's always involved in various charitable and philanthropic endeavors. He's on the board of directors for the Sosnoff Foundation.
That's true, but I would say that's a little bit of a stretch. That's not really, but yes,
not a defining characteristic, although it is a characteristic.
I am the chairman of my own foundation.
I focus on education, arts, and environmental conservation.
I wouldn't say that, but it is focused on giving away money. Yes.
Okay. Throughout his career, Sosnoff has been recognized for his innovative approach to finance and his contributions to the industry. Many awards and accolades. This one is my favorite. This is the last sentence. Including being named one of Forbes magazine's 30 people to watch under the age of 30 in 2012.
No, that wouldn't exactly work.
Just some difficult math there.
Yeah, that's a difficult math.
I went to this new product, this Chat GPT, that's all the chit chat around town. Primarily because of my failure to deliver on the teleportation. And so they got to talk about something. And so I went into this thing. And I said, write me a biography of Tom Sosnoff. Well, that's actually a lie. I asked Josh to go into the software and ask the software to say, write me a biography of Tom Sosnoff. So
okay. And that's what it came up with.
And that's what it came up with.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
And it took like 15 seconds. It was amazing to watch, actually. It's like boom, bing, bang, boom.
Yeah, it's incredible stuff. I mean, we've played around with doing some summaries of our daily research and stuff like that. I've never used it for anything personal, but
meaning you've got to like write a summary of Tasty Trade's daily, morning report. Or
no,
like
we'll do a piece like, Jacob did a piece, today on, log normal versus simple results, and like, it was really complex, and this could do a very short, paragraph or two just explaining, what he talked about in, 7 different slides or something like that. So and those work out, they're really interesting, and it works out quite well. Anything that's very quantitative is easier for the chat to pick up, but has a hard time with birthdays.
We're kind of heading, you can see the direction where today's discussion is headed already, but so whether it's my teleportation SPAC, which is still really trying to get, we're still working on it.
Yeah.
But, or the Chat GPT, which they're still working on that as well, although it seems like they've got a bit further than I have. It brings up the age old, what's his name? Stanley Kubrick, the age old question of, the machines versus man versus the machines. And I feel like Chat GPT is kind of the first consumer product, if you want to call it that, where basically anybody can, they have the whole thing, give me a plan for my 10-year-old's birthday party, or, you can kind of pick whatever your life situation is. And write me a 200 words. It's great for cheating on your homework. Write me.
I don't think there's a kid in America that hasn't.
I feel like that's the number one use case right now. You're like,
my God, if I had this that is absolutely the number one use case. I need a book report on Huck Finn and a couple other things. Catcher in the Rye. Yeah, exactly.
And so, I want to talk to you about this a little bit, because the robots really came to Wall Street a long time ago, and they've been, getting deeper and deeper into Wall Street, whether it's the trading algorithm, and, half the people, or, 25% of the people at Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley are, tech engineers, software engineers, or whatever, everything everybody knows. But when it comes to Wall Street, you've really staked your ground as man is better than a machine. That machines are wonderful tools for man, but they're not a replacement for man. And I'm interested, as we see the machines sort of go into what I'll call the retail marketplace, meaning not retail investing, but just the consumer marketplace, I guess would be the way to say it. Whether you maintain your man over machine principles, which you're so clearly rooted in when it comes to finance.
Well, I mean, the line that we've coined over the years that I think is important to kind of the foundation of Tasty has always been brains over bots.
Right. Yeah.
And, we've built much of the firm around the concept of brains over bots and everything else. Listen, the Chat GPT is really cool. And for certain use cases, it's incredible. If we're getting into a much broader discussion of, is this good or bad for the future of finance and for the future of investing and business and entrepreneurship and everything else,
and education and the legal profession and content creation,
sure.
And there's a lot of ands.
Everything. If we're going that direction, the answer is, I think it's unbelievable. It's awesome, and I think it's going to really help a lot of people, and it is going to. One of the things that's always bothered me about, everything from business to lots of other aspects of life and trying to grow things has always been that some people have an ability to articulate things in a very clear and concise way that allows you to understand it and move forward with that person. But a lot of people, the majority of people, struggle with it. And I always feel the difference between a certain level of success and not being able to achieve a certain level of success. Like the people in the very upper end of the distribution curve, to me, are the ones who can articulate and make and sell their case the best. And I think it's skill. not
That they
something.
can write and speak in a way that persuades people to take action in alignment with their argument.
And at the same time displays
persuasive reasoning.
And at the same time displays their passion and everything else. And I think if there is a tool like Chat GPT or whatever else it is, there's probably lots of different tools out there. The reason we talk about this one, because I think this is the free one, right? That's pretty much, for on a consumer level, it's the free one. But the reason it's so interesting is because this levels the playing field in so many different ways that, from an employer side, I think it's really helpful. And from an individual side, I think what it does is it essentially arbs out a lot of the inefficiencies in people's personal deficiencies, and what they're able to articulate.
Meaning it empowers more people to offer better persuasive arguments for ideas.
100%. And so to me, it's a great thing. Now, let's take it one step further and talk about financial markets, because that's where you started, the whole brains over bots thing. And that's a very different animal, because in financial markets, you have in my ability to tell a story versus your ability to tell a story versus, Joe Smith, or whatever else, or Mary Smith. There's, some people might buy your story, some people might buy my story, some people might buy Mary Smith or Joe Smith's story, but I'm confident that I'm going to sell more than anybody else, because that's where my success comes from. Okay, just hear me out for a second. In the financial markets, because of the across the board, the depth of liquidity and the across the board efficiency in listed financial markets, okay, there's virtually, in one tick or one penny or fraction of a penny wide markets, there are no inefficiencies anymore. So where there's no inefficiencies, I don't understand how the bot where it adds value and how it adds value. So,
you mean in finance?
In finance.
I mean, the obvious place where it added value was speed, right? Citadel, if that's a bot, if you want to call it HF. I know that's I don't want to derail what you're saying, because I think you're making an important point.
Yeah, I understand. Like I would argue in the world of finance, where the Chat GPT and other similar bots add value is in the ability to create instantaneous, disseminated content that explains potentially what's happening. So, for example, the Fed comes out with some change in interest rates or something. They can give you immediate. Within 12 seconds you have a story. This is what happened. It could be earnings. It could be anything that's in print or text or print or any kind of media. But when it comes to actual trading, no, I don't get it. I don't see where the edge is at all.
Yeah, and I agree with you. But your point is with the brains over bots that it may be bots over brains when it comes to things like marketing or financial journalism. What I'll call the ancillary pieces of finance.
Well, let's put it this way. What it does is, we have in today's world, we've gone from, really great writers, the Krugmans of the world and things like that. We've gone from to generic, one paragraph or 100 word tweets, or one paragraph or 100 character tweets, or one single paragraph of news. The most frustrating thing about news today is that it's just really all it is just scraping a couple of stories for single paragraphs, that anybody can read in 15 seconds or less. So, I mean, what it does is it in some ways, it just makes that part of the marketplace more efficient, so that there can be so that firms can save costs to create, really intelligent, maybe research or writing.
But allow Tasty Trade to publish more content. Not that that's necessarily a good idea or a bad idea, because more lousy, I won't say, more average content may or may not have value depending on broader strategy. But it could be it could allow any company. It doesn't have to be a financial firm. It could be a car company.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. What it does for us, Dylan, is it like let's say we create 50 hours of content a day, 50 hours of research a day to do, maybe an hour or two of content. But of that, when we have to summarize it to post it on our sites and things like that, that requires a lot of man hours, and that we basically eliminate that. So that's nice, that we can use those man hours for something else.
Summarize all of Dr. Data's reports from the last week or whatever, and then. Yeah,
exactly. So then we can use those hours now become available for something else. So it makes Tasty and other companies like this more efficient. Potentially, if Dylan Radigan has a question about, explain to me, what a future is. You're a customer. You want to open a futures account. Explain what a future is. Well, obviously that can make our answers easier. That's all.
And I guess, but the bigger question, is obviously everybody is impressed by this.
Yeah.
Or it's intrigued, perplexed. Something that it hasn't. When you see it, you're like, oh, that's either you're like cool, or you're like, this is revolutionary. And I guess in the spectrum of that's cool at the one end, and this is revolutionary at the other end, where do you come down?
Oh, between cool and revolutionary?
Yeah, cool is like, oh, if you ask it a question, it gives you an answer. It's like a party trick, right? And revolutionary is, we're completely restructuring the labor market and the content industry forever.
It has the potential to be way more than cool.
What is a stock market future?
I mean, it has the potential to be way more than cool. Like, I am not one of these people that is scared about, I'm for sure not going to sit here and go, oh, this is a bad thing because it's gonna cost people jobs. It's gonna make everything more generic. It's gonna
kill us. The robots are gonna kill us.
Yeah, I'm not one of those. I'm absolutely not one of those people. I think the exact opposite. I'm all for as much innovation as possible and everything else. What I don't want to happen is I don't want people to say, okay, so you just read off that thing. You asked to do a bio of Tom Sosnoff, right? I don't want people to say now, oh, well, you lied about on your bio, and you said you were,
Urbana-Champaign.
You went to Urbana-Champaign, and you were 37 years old, and you were a finance major. I'm like, I didn't write that. I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't write that. I'm surprised. Who's the guy that? George, is it Santos? Who's the guy that
Santos? Yeah. The guy from New York.
Yeah, I'm honestly surprised that he wasn't smart enough to say
this.
Of course, I can't.
It wasn't me. You're saying we were using ChatGPT.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. I just used ChatGPT. They just did the whole thing. I had no idea. I can't believe he wasn't smart enough to say. I mean, listen, his defense of, okay, I lied. What do you want from me? Is way worse than, oh, it was ChatGPT. But I mean, that shows how ridiculously stupid he is to start with. But I guess the whole point is, if somebody said that to me now, you'd be like, oh, I said it right here, Tom. I read it. You must have done this.
Right. Well, that's a whole other world, right? That goes into forget that. There's deep fakes. I can create a Tom Sosnoff talking where Tom Sosnoff says, I'm a graduate of the University of Chicago.
100%.
And it's not you, and you didn't say that. I mean, that's really, that we're going into a different sort of dystopian piece of this, which I don't know how.
Yeah. Which, there's parts of that are scary, and then we're going to have to somehow verify that the person talking was you. We saw that happen here in Chicago with somebody, a horrible situation where, it was a deep fake of something, and it was just a bad situation. And I've seen it before. So it is kind of ugly.
You think it's going to require new legislation? Like penalties for
maybe,
false.
But listen, I have an impersonator who is on Instagram who's posting all this stuff as me, and I can't get. I mean, I've talked to Instagram 30 times. They can't get rid of this guy, and
is he doing a good job?
Yeah, he's doing a really good job. I mean,
is he?
I mean, he's doing a really good job.
Financial content.
He's doing a really good job of being a pain in the ass. But
okay.
but on the one hand, it makes me want to close down, and leave Instagram. And because I don't really use it that much. But on the other hand, if you said to me, and I'm seeing the negative side to it, but would I want to? Do I think Instagram is good? And the answer is, of course. Mm-hmm. But we have to suffer through some of these growing pains, and it's, but I would never trade that. I mean, we're seeing the same thing in TikTok right now. There's all these crazy politicians that want to, oh no more TikTok. That whatever.
The Chinese are listening.
Yeah, for a billion reasons, and the answer is no. TikTok's great. Let's just, we can fix things. Don't want to go backwards technology-wise. Never, ever, ever.
I guess the other thought that I'm having, partially inspired by what you were just saying, and then just referring back specifically to ChatGPT, is, is this a horse and buggy moment where certain jobs, particularly writing jobs, whether they're writing for the marketing department at Ford Motor Company, or whether it's writing, papers for your high school history class, or whether it's writing news stories for a news at Bloomberg or whatever, is the writer class, with the exception of exceptional, like Paul Krugman or Stephen King or whatever, but is the writing profession is this a horse and buggy moment for writing?
Well, I mean, it is going to make people ultimately into better writers. Is it going to eliminate the job of being a content writer for Nordstrom or for what? I mean, there's so much writing that happens for the website and for the. I doubt it, because I don't think that. I mean, I seriously doubt it. I mean, I think it's going to make everybody into a better writer.
Elaborate, if you don't mind.
Because anytime that you couldn't argue. The argument is that this creates competition for writing. Right, in the writing space, this creates competition. Sure. So competition always creates more value, creates better outcomes.
Yeah, but also sometimes if the competition is a car and you're a horse and buggy man.
Okay, so what's wrong with the car?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not passing a moral decision. I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I understand.
Sometimes there's these big disruption, big structural. I mean, nothing's wrong, but you may have a lot of.
Yeah, so that's okay.
Labor force.
I mean, that's okay. When the horse and buggy was replaced by the car, that's a good thing. And if this gets good enough, then fine, that's a good thing. And then, listen, that's.
But are we heading to a world where there's just? I mean, and this would be I'm playing sort of.
I understand.
Negative Nancy here a little bit, but are we just heading to a world where really there's a lot of the jobs are going away, whether it's reporting or writing or composing or write a movie script or draft a brief for a lawsuit or on and on and on. There's so much work that happens, whether it's in legal, journalism, creative, et cetera. I mean, millions of jobs. Where we're just in a world that's, legal marijuana, universal basic income, and ChatGPT, and you know what? Nobody works anymore.
Well, I don't really think that would be the case at all. But let's talk in the legal profession, there's probably still more writing than anything, and the average legal cost now is in some parts of the country it's $300 or $400 an hour. In other parts, like in Chicago, especially in the financial world, it could be $700 to $1,200 an hour we pay.
I hate to say it, but I have had interactions with attorneys in the last year of my life where it's more like $2,500 an hour.
Okay, so perfect. Which I don't even know what I don't even know what the most we pay. I'm out of touch.
I bet you could pay $5,000 an hour for some M&A lawyer.
And to write a document that that if a chatbot can write it, I'm totally fine with paying $0 for a chatbot to write it and having, as we would say, lawyers lawyer rather than lawyers write documents. So if this can lower the cost of, my legal fees, which is a our professional fees are a ridiculous cost that get passed on to, through our other expenses. And if it means we can cut down on professional costs, I'm all for it. So yeah, I don't see the negative in that at all for anybody, other than a few law firms, which I don't really care about.
Yeah, I know, and listen, neither do I. I'm just thinking at the highest. I mean, I'm just being deliberately alarmist.
No. I understand that, but we spend a lot of time writing things that are very repetitive and not very scalable time-wise. And when you think about it, from everything from law enforcement to politics to different litigation and everything else, there's an incredible amount of time wasted on stuff that could be done by machines. So the idea that is that going to cost some jobs? Well, it's going to change some jobs, but we have job shortages everywhere now.
Yeah. Coming back to finance.
Yeah.
Why is it, like, if I came to you and said, listen, I've written the ultimate program that identifies highly liquid securities or options with highly liquid underlyings on price extremes that are at an extreme implied volatility relative to itself, sort of run down the tasty trade boilerplate, fantasy checklist.
Sure.
And I've gone 45 days out and all the things that everybody knows. Why would you still choose a person over that list of highly liquid, extreme underlying, high IVR, 45 days?
Well, you can do that already. You can scan.
I know, but even I know, but you're saying that that's not as good as a person.
Well, it's not as good as a person because there's a lot more to it than just what you just mentioned there. Then there's the choice of strategy based on all the other things that you have on. And then price extreme is something that's subjective. Price extreme is not, so high implied volatility is not subjective. High implied volatility is ranked, and so it is what it is, but it's not subjective. But price extreme is subjective. So that there are variables here that are still subjective.
So and I'll give you a classic example. We'll call this the trader's conundrum, because I have no doubt that this is a universal experience. Tesla went from 414 to 177 over the last, whatever, right? And at 177, I bought puts. About 120 puts expiring in February, a couple weeks ago, right? And the stock's just been getting pounded, as everybody knows, whatever, it's like 110 or something now, went down. And that option ran, and it was profitable. Very, very profitable, actually. So then I'm like, okay, well, now it's gone down to, I think it went down to 140. And I was like, this is unbelievable. This Tesla's a mess. And at 140, I was like, okay, I'm going to buy calls with some of my winnings, because it can't possibly keep doing this. And in the process, gave back 80% of what I'd made in the put by buying calls that became worthless because the stock went from 140 to 110. I use that as for two reasons. One, I think it validates your point as to what is a price extreme, because one, being down at 170 from 414 sure looks extreme. I mean, I know people that were buying it at 200. It was down more than that, right?
Sure.
Do you have any insight? How do you define a price? In other words, I think that the subjectivity of a price extreme becomes a really interesting point of conversation, one, and then two, from a trading perspective, it almost feels like it's impossible. Like, it's the same way it's impossible to ride something all the way up unless you fall asleep, and it's also impossible to ride something all the way down, because a rational actor, you're like, I've got to take something off here, or it's ridiculous.
Of course.
How do you define? What have you learned about identifying price extremes? I
haven't learned anything. I just, the most important thing you can do about price extreme is not to believe that you know anything, just to say, hey, you know what, this looks like price extreme to me. So, you don't overthink it. Like, there is no such thing as being able to there's no such thing.
It doesn't
as,
live in a percentage. It doesn't live in a
Right. I mean, I would have thought Tesla you're right. When Tesla went from 300 to 200, I thought that was price extreme. When it went from 200 to 150, I thought that was price extreme. When it went from 150 to 125, I thought that was price extreme. I mean, how do you know? There's no way to know.
Right, but at the same time, you've said that Tesla was one of your more profitable trades this year, selling calls throughout the year on and off.
No, selling premium. I never just sold calls.
I'm sorry, selling premium. Sorry.
Because until recently, Tesla has traded inside the expected move. Pretty much for the first 10 and a half months of the year, Tesla stayed inside its expected move when a lot of other stocks moved outside of it. Tesla just recently moved outside of its expected move in the last month to the downside. But when it did, the implied volatility rank was really low. So the way we look at things, we didn't have much on when it dropped.
So you were defended by definition. You were unexposed.
Unexposed by the nature of the way we trade.
By virtue of an IV at the time.
Yep.
So the reason a bot can't run the filter and win is because price extreme is subjective.
That's right.
And strategy is subjective as well.
There is no such thing.
Capital dependent.
There is no such thing as a bot that has ever conquered the stock market. There have been hundreds of thousands of people who have tried. They have spent hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in the process of trying to do that. And what we've learned over time is the only, quote, bots or high frequency platforms that have been crazy successful have not been successful because they've learned how to predict what the market's going to do. They're crazy successful because they've learned how to monetize huge pools of positions where they can determine, very small amounts of edge when buying or selling something. That's all it is. Has nothing to do with market direction.
So the only thing that bots are good for is pot odds, basically, probabilities.
What bots are good for is speed. And what they're good for is making very fast decisions, of which they can, their real skill is fast decisions so that they can participate with the most amount of edge.
Mm-hmm.
See, if
meaning that they get the most edge per hour because they can make more decisions per hour.
That's right.
So there's whatever the percentage of available edge may be, a bot's ability to capture a bigger percentage of it is higher than a human's. Yeah,
if every hour, let's just give an example, if every hour $10 billion worth of notional securities trades through on all the listed exchanges every hour, $10 billion. It's probably more than that, but let's just say it's $10 billion. And let's say there is 0.25% to 0.5% of edge in that $10 billion every single hour. That's how efficient the markets are. But let's just say there's 25 basis points to 50 basis points of edge in that $10 billion of flow every single hour. Then the firms that make the most money, high frequency wise, are the firms that participate with the most amount of that order flow. So it's lots of 25 basis points, which is, which is a tiny, minuscule amount of money. But if you multiply it out by hundreds
$10 billion an hour, or if it's 25 basis points, so let's say it's $25 million an hour.
Well, that's what you capture. That's the edge when you make
available flow.
That's the available edge. Then so there's 25 cents, but you don't. That's a theoretical capture.
I understand.
You actually don't turn that into money until some point down the road. So what percent of that theoretical capture? We think it's about 25% of the theoretical capture that they make. But it could be more, could be less, depending on how effective their ability to manage positions or their bots are.
Ken Griffin's weekly income, you can get a sense of what they're capturing.
Yeah, but that's one person because they have a big share they participate in a big share of the flow. Their technology is really good, and it's good because they're able to make the better your markets are, the more you participate. That's how it works. So whoever makes the best market has the highest level of participation. So what you have to decide as a firm is, do I want to make 10 cents and participate with 80% of the flow, or do I want to make 20 cents and participate with 20% of the flow? And that is the challenge these firms have, and they all compete with each other at a very high level. So it's not easy at all.
But again, outside of that domain, bots to you are good for analysis and they're good for filtering.
Yeah.
But when you get to the bottom of the filtering list, there's been filtering for decades, obviously, on Wall Street, which comes down to a decision on strategy, available capital, and what is a price extreme.
Yeah, they make us smarter. I mean, they were able to disseminate. We're able to disseminate and ingest more information, and thus making us smarter and faster, and we're able to process things better. But in the end, they're not making trading decisions for us. It's still brains over bots.
But that doesn't apply outside of Wall Street.
Outside of Wall Street, so Wall Street has been commoditized and arbed. The rest of the world has not. And so in the rest of the world, there are still fairly wide markets, but there is a lot less liquidity and a lot less opportunity. So it's very hard. Like if Dylan Radigan wanted to go out and buy and sell cars, that's a very difficult marketplace, to get. You're not going to be, the reason a dealer can make money buying a used car is because they're buying on the bid and selling on the offer. And so even though they only do a dealership might do 150 used cars a month, they
make $4,000 a car
or $2,000, whatever the number is. It could be $5,000, $2,000, $1,000. Who cares? But that's their whole business. And that's a very capital intensive, and that's a business that they've earned over decades of being a credible resource for that, with a tax advantage. That's not something you can break in. Dealer can offer me $50,000 for a car, and I get $55,000 against the new car. Right? Dealer, you offer somebody $50,000, they get nothing against the new car. So it's not that easy.
Could a bot do what your technology team did to build Thinkorswim Tasty Trade?
Not a chance.
So Tasty works?
Not a chance. It's all vision.
Could you retain only your top programmers with the strategy and vision, and then use AI to produce the code?
I don't think so, but I'm sure that's at some point there's parts of that are coming. I'm not saying that AI can't copy things, but I don't know how AI can know what's in my head.
But maybe if you told AI what is in your head, it could write the code for you.
I don't think they can do that yet. I'm sure it's coming.
It just occurred to me as another sort of labor vertical, much like
the code.
It might, in other words, it might make people with vision. That would make it possible for people with vision, but without the financial resources to hire a coding team to produce algorithms.
Well, listen, 20 years ago, nobody would have thought that you could essentially. The idea of being able to, in 1999, 2000, 2001, 2002, the idea of being able to build technology without having to have the physical servers or the hardware, the biggest fear we had when we built technology in 1999 was how do we afford these
all these boxes,
all these servers? These Sun servers are $250,000 a server. How do we afford these servers? How do we afford all the servers, all the database equipment, all the database software, everything that was required on a hardware side? Today, you start a company, there's zero hardware costs. Okay, you just go, all right, we're just in the cloud. We'll just pay Amazon some money, whatever.
AWS is the
So the whole world's changed in 20 years, and could that mean that the engineering side changes the next 20 years? Of course, but that's not going to determine what happens. I don't think that's not what we need to worry about right now. I mean, I don't worry about that. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good thing too. It was just a new thought that occurred to me. That it's not just writing words; it's also writing code.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
is in the theoretical domain of AI.
Yeah, I can tell you right now that our like superstar developers, they don't see it, not yet.
Okay. Is there any reason other than your personality type that you don't have any that you look at that you don't see any of the doomsday applications of AI?
It's a lot of my personality. I don't want to, I don't want, I couldn't care that, like, I don't think about business or life that way. It's a waste of life. So like, I don't worry about that stuff. Like let everybody else that thinks that way worry about that stuff and write about that stuff and complain about that stuff. I think of the exact opposite, which is, how do I take this incredible technology? Like there's some brilliant minds out there. How do I monetize their brilliance? And no, so we look at it completely different. We will utilize this technology however we can, when the time is right. We're already doing it, like, we're already utilizing some of it like on our help desk, and through some of the automated,
like an automated chat response, like what's wrong with your computer or whatever.
Or how do you send a check, like, or how do you do an ACH?
How do I make a deposit wire transfer to my account?
Exactly. And there's, and I can only see that really helping the teams and making us more efficient and getting people, we're already the fastest firm in the world at answering emails. We're going to be faster now, and so I don't see any negatives. No. It's going to help us, man. It's going to help us build some really cool stuff.
I think it's incredible. I mean, I think you speak the truth. I think the risk is unquantifiable, and I think unquantifiable risk is best ignored because it's a waste of your life.
Yeah, of course. That's the whole thing. I mean, like, like the beauty of this, the beauty of living in the world that we live in here is that anything is possible. That's the whole thing with the living in the US, America, anything's possible. And listen, this just opens up more campaigns for more entrepreneurs and more creative people and more innovators, and it's gonna be great.
And better communication might even lead to world peace.
Yeah, better spelling. I mean, yeah. There's no negatives. I mean, like,
bad communication is probably one of the most fundamental sources of conflict in the world, personally or globally.
Yeah, it is going to take some very, backward, like, old school religious cultures or some places that are, buried behind horrible dictatorships like North Korea and places like that. It is going to change. People are going to have access to very different stories and information and things like that, I think it is going to change the world, and in a good way.
So we're going to end on revolutionary more than cool.
Well, yeah.
And a good revolution.
But are there going to be bad actors? Yeah, of course. But, okay, so what? There's bad actors.
Someone hacked my Twitter account this summer.
Yeah, it sucks.
Twitter didn't respond for like a month and a half.
Yeah. Well, you should write to Elon personally. Tell him who you are.
I also interviewed him, not quite as early as Mark Zuckerberg, but I did interview Elon. Must have been right when he left PayPal and he just started Tesla. When remember he bought whatever the carcass of Lotus was to start with that first car. And he must have been doing a media tour or something. He was young. He was, he must have been 27 or 26 or some number like this.
Well, he's like your age, isn't he?
Yeah. So, but I was also young, right? Yeah. I think we're both at the same. I think we're identical in age, within 8 months or something.
How was the interview?
More compelling than Mark Zuckerberg. Like, I felt like Mark Zuckerberg, he didn't know any more than anybody. It's obvious in that interview when you watch it he didn't have any idea. He said, I asked him in that interview, how big do you think this can get, Mark? And he said, man, I think we can get into the thousands.
Well, he's just being humble.
I think that whole thing was the invention of what's her name? I shouldn't call her what's her name, but Sheryl Sandberg. I believe she was like, this is how you make money with this, and I will show you. Whereas I think Elon was more like, I found Elon more compelling, I would say, as a guest, in the sense that he was clearly had basically unlimited risk appetite, and a huge ambition. He was like, I want to do physical things. He wanted to make a car. That's not very few people in Silicon Valley ever, and especially at that time, after they cash out, they all want to do another app or another software. It's always a software play of some kind.
Yeah.
Not a hardware play. And I found that distinctly respectable at the time.
Yeah, he's going to take his MO is going to change a little bit after the sell-off, and his 65% sell-off in his net worth is his whole. He's going to change a little bit, but he'll be back.
But it's interesting because, again, I know we're running long, but if you look at his wealth, it was all through object development, whether it was Solar City, even though that wasn't a blockbuster, but it was an object. The car, obviously, and the spaceship, obviously, and even the boring tunnel, like all of his things are things.
Yeah.
And the first time he leaves the reservation and goes into the software business, see, he knew better when he was 25.
Hey, at some point you think you're invincible. I get it.
That's why they should never have legalized weed. If they hadn't legalized weed, this never would have happened.
We're out of time, Mr. Radigan. I'm Tom Sosnoff. He's
still. What happened to you this year, Elon? I smoked some weed. I bought Twitter, and I lost all my money. Okay.
It was a bad second half of 2022.
I hope it was some good weed, bro.
Yeah. I'm Tom Sosnoff. He's Dylan Radigan. This is Truth or Skepticism. Every Wednesday, 1 p.m. Central Time. Please join us. Dylan, last time of the year. Good job.
Happy New Year. It's a pleasure. I can't wait to see you next week.
Happy New Year, and looking forward to next year.
Likewise. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.